All right. Welcome to Backstep Outdoors. I'm Aaron. This is Sam.
How's it going?
We're coming to you live from Backstep Outdoors studio, aka my man cave.
It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. This is the only wall we can show you right now. We'll have updates later in the summer. So.
This is our third podcast now. Today we're going to be talking mainly about misconceptions, a couple misconceptions about deer hunters or hunting in general. We're going to stay on the topic of deer hunting mainly just because of the fact that we just finished up with deer season about a month and almost 2 months ago now, over 2 months ago now.
Yeah. January.
And we're going to be, where's Steve?
We got a guest speaker already calling in.
What's going on, Steve? You're on with us.
Hey, long-time listener, first-time caller. How's it going?
Good. It's good to have you on since you can't be here in person today, being daddy daycare.
Oh, yeah. I like to call it parenting.
Parenting? So, Steve, we're the main topics today we're going to talk about is misconceptions, and then towards the end we're going to talk about a couple mistakes that we've made over our time hunting. I know we've all three got varied levels of hunting and experience, and how much we actually are able to go out and how we've been successful and not been successful. So kind of talk about that at the end. But first, we're going to talk about a couple misconceptions that a lot of hunters have, new hunters have, or people that are looking to get into hunting may have about hunting in general, and kind of settle their nerves about it a little bit, try to get more people involved. So.
Oh, good.
So, one of the first ones, and Steve, you're a good one to talk to about this because you just bought a bunch of Sitka gear. But we're going to talk about camo.
Oh, nice.
So, misconceptions about necessarily having to have the best stuff. Obviously, we all come into deals every now and then where the best stuff on the market ends up becoming super cheap for us and we can afford it versus when it's not on sale and we can't afford it because it's $300 for a coat. But my personal opinion on it is that you can kill deer with anything. What was it that we talked about in the podcast before? Something Steve posted or sent to us was the guy hunting with a plaid shirt and blue jeans.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter really what you have on as long as you play the right card with wind or scent control or whatever, which is another topic we'll talk about here in a minute. It's all part of the game. It's all part of it to make it all work right. So, but I've got plenty of stuff from Walmart. I got stuff from Walmart, Meijer, clearance rack at Cabela's, mix match camo, stuff from the Marine Corps that I still use.
The frog gear.
The flame resistant outer gear or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of on the same boat. I've had the Mossy Oak, I think it was the new camo. At the time, it was called Mossy Oak New Breakup or something from Cabela's, and I've had that for 10 plus years and used that, and that's all I've ever used up until I haven't even got to use any of the new stuff I came across the bargain on, and I just like cool stuff. That's why I bought it.
Oh, yeah.
Other than that, I'm a bargain shopper when it goes out, but I also know people like Aaron who like to wear whatever's on their back and they'll just go out hunting and kill whatever's out there.
You hunted in plaid a couple times this year, didn't you?
Yep. Speaking of that, so I've been on both sides of the lane. I've been one of those guys where I'll wear anything, which is pretty much at the point I'm at now. It just has to be warm enough for me. I don't care if it's a solid color or plaid or camo. But then not so many years ago, I used to be one of those guys where all I wore was real tree and didn't even think about buying anything else or wearing solid colors. I was just under that mindset of, if I had all the same type of camo, it would be like I was almost invisible to deer. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. To me now, though, it's just those companies trying to make money.
Well, they make a lot of money.
But it's like, as long as you sit still and you're quiet. I mean, old timers used to hunt in, like I said, blue jeans and flannel shirts.
Right.
So, but this year, I think I told Sam, and I know I told you, Steve, all it's going to be is plaid and wool.
For 2020?
Yeah, for 2020.
Plaid year.
So.
Sam, are you going out in a tank top for archery?
Yeah, I'm going to wear my American flag tank top and maybe some flip-flops.
Nice.
Yes. It's going to be awesome. Yeah, I mean, I know this past year I didn't practice, even though I got lucky on my first day. I didn't practice as much discipline as I did for even scent control. I mean, I hung my camo outside the night before, and then all my undergarments, my base layers, were out of my closet sitting next to all the other clothes I used fabric softener on. And I don't know if the wind was just right or that deer was on a scent, and I got lucky on it. And then I got an uncle and a ex-brother-in-law who shoot a deer almost every year with a cigarette hanging out of their mouth.
Right. Well, that's like if you look back at like the old timers, like my dad when he hunted, my uncle when they first started hunting. As far as I can remember, when they first started back, when I remember back in the '90s, they didn't have the technology, the carbon, activated carbon, or whatever they've got now, where everything is. You don't ever have to wash it, or you only wash it minimally, and it takes away your scent and everything else with it. They didn't have that stuff back then, at least definitely not the technology they've got now. So it was all deer spray or cover scent or I remember my dad would take the stuff out. We had a clothesline out behind the house, and he'd wash his stuff, and then he would take it outside, and it would literally, on a day like today where it's kind of windy out, he'd let it hang on the clothesline and just flap in the breeze for the entire day, put it in a tote, and then put it back out again the next day and do the same thing all over again. And my dad and uncle, they've killed tons of deer doing that, using that technique. And that's where I think a lot of people get in the misconceptions that you have to have the nicest stuff, you have to have the nicest equipment to do this, and really you don't have to. It just boils down to, like you said, playing the wind, which is the next topic, and using the scent control properly. You don't have to have the nicest stuff to do it. As long as you are smart about it, anybody can go out there and have a chance.
Yeah.
So, which that actually will bring us on to the next topic about wind control, or hunting the wind versus scent control. Okay, Aaron, you'll go ahead and.
So, like I said, just about the camo thing, I used to be one of those guys that was a scent control freak. Spray my clothes down every time before I go hunt, and then spray them down again, and then put them in the tote after I was done. Just thinking that I was pretty much invisible out there to those deer. But, after so many encounters with deer, and then, getting picked off a couple times, you just start to think about that kind of stuff. And so now, I've got a wood burning stove out here in my shop, and all my clothes are right above here. And all my clothes smell like wood smoke. So just over time, I've kind of learned to play the wind in my advantage and just figure out where the deer are coming from, and just, set up accordingly. And to me, that's the one true way where you won't get picked off, is if they can't smell you. Even with scent control, in my opinion, they're still going to smell you. They might not know what you are, or you might smell like dirt or something like that, but they still smell you. And so if they can't smell you, then they don't know you're there.
Right.
So speaking of that, we have a video that we need to get up. I was hunting across the road, and wind was in my favor until this little buck goes a different way, which I wasn't expecting him to. And he's at 15 yards and stops like he hit a brick wall, because my wind blows right to him, turns around and runs back up the river bottom. So, he smelled something that he didn't like, but that's just a good example of
how the wind affects it, and how playing it, and how, that's the big thing too. And that's where, for me, I'm not 100% wind. I still practice a lot of scent control, which I know is different than yours. And you've killed deer, I've killed deer. You can harvest a deer either which way.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong answer to it. There's some guys out there that are die-hard wind only. There's other guys out there that are die-hard activated carbon only. I'm only going to go out there with this.
Yeah.
Have no qualms about the wind. They don't care. But I like to play a little bit of both. I do a lot of scent control with my gear in the early season before season starts, and then throughout the season. As the season goes on, I get a little bit more lax with it, just because it is a pain in the ass throughout the entirety of it. To wash all my gear, I've got a whole process of everything I do, and it's probably a 2-3 hour ordeal every time I need to wash all my stuff. Probably more like 4 or 5, because I hang it outside and spray it and wash it 2 or 3 times, dryer scent, the dryer sheets that smell like dirt, all that stuff. So, but using the scent control in conjunction with it, it's all about how much time you have available. If you don't have a whole lot of time available, or if you like playing the wind only, it's just a preference. It's a big preference you have. There's no right or wrong answer to it. Just for me, I play a little bit of both, and that's I had a video up yesterday or 2 days ago. There was a group of 3 does. Actually, the video was taken right after I harvested another doe, and those 3 does came in right afterwards, sniffed around right where I shot her at, and they came up and walked right underneath my stand. And you can, even with all of my scent control that I practice, it did allow them to get up underneath the stand. But the older doe, you could tell in the pictures or the video, she kind of can see me because of where the light was on my stand and me, but she smelt me before she saw me. And even after she smelt me and saw me a little bit, she didn't really know what I was. So she didn't blow out of there and she didn't bounce out, but she changed her pattern. She was on a little bit more of alert. She changed the pattern or the path that she was going. Instead of coming straight underneath the stand, she stopped about 10 yards short and then kind of skirted back up the hill and went around the outside of me. So I've used both. I enjoy using both. But then later on in the season, as the season goes on and I'm not using as much scent control as I was at the beginning of the season because of sweating and everything else like that, I play more wind. I try to play more wind just because that's the way I've been doing it. But the other thing that factors into that too is goes to more of that mobile hunting thing. I know you've got a saddle that you've used. I don't think you've even used it, have you?
I haven't used a saddle, but I've got a tiny tree stand that is
super mobile, and I used it
easy to carry.
Fort Bend last year, and it was awesome. But using the type of hunting that you do is going to also dictate that as well, because for me, like the properties that I've hunted, especially last year, I've got very limited spots to hunt, so I can't play the wind all the time. I'm not mobile. My stands are heavy as hell. There was
Walmart special.
Walmart special, Menard special.
All steel.
We bought moon stands. Did you ever see those? Moon stands 2 years ago, 3 years ago. They were pretty popular, solid as a rock, but they weighed 40 pounds.
Yeah.
So there's no carrying that around throughout the season. So once my stands are set, they're set. And I can't necessarily play the wind all the time when I've only got 2 stands on this property, 1 stand on another property. That's why I have to use scent control more than the wind, just because that's how it dictates. So, Steve, I don't know if that's something similar to you with the limited availability, limited time, limited spots to go. So you kind of have to do a little bit of both type deal.
I kind of squirreled there. I kind of got sidetracked and lost what we were talking about, to be honest.
Scent control versus playing the wind.
Oh yeah, that's something. I'm kind of like the fifth wheel hunter. My family is an avid hunter, and they do a lot of the work. So when I get an opportunity, usually I'm the fifth wheel, and I go out, and my family they know the land, and they already got stuff set up. So it's just you go out there, and you hope the weather's good for you, and you get lucky. It's just kind of luck of the draw, especially for me. Many years I went out where I was sitting, it wasn't the ideal spot, and other people saw things or took a doe or a buck, and I just saw them out in the field or in the trees and never got close enough. So I can't really tell you if I got winded or not. Or I really just think it's like fishing. You're just lucky to be in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the other misconceptions that I didn't even write down, but a lot of people think that they watch all these hunting shows on the Outdoor Channel and all these other different TV outlets, and I feel like they've gotten better at it over the years. But before growing up, all you saw was you'd see these guys going out and they'd see
5 minutes of the hunt and then they're killing something.
Or they've got, I mean, you look at Drury Outdoors, no offense to any of them, I mean, they've got a hell of a farm out there, and they'll see 40, 50 deer in a sit.
Yeah.
Or they'll be out there looking for a specific buck, and there'll be 30 does out there and 10 different bucks that any of us would take any day of the week.
Yeah.
But that's a huge misconception that people think that every time you go out, you're going to see something. Hell, I went, or you're going to harvest something. Every season they feel like they're going to harvest something, and if you go out once or twice, or one season or two seasons, you don't get something, there's a lot of guys that get deterred and feel bad because they're like, man, I'm doing something wrong or whatever. And the reality of it is I mean, I went my first 3 seasons, I maybe saw 10 deer the entire first 3 seasons I was out. I was hunting all public land, and I didn't harvest anything, and I was discouraged. I mean, I didn't know if I was doing something wrong or what, because you watch these TV shows and these guys are out there smoking these deer every time they go out, and it's not the case. I know it's probably been the same thing for you.
Yeah.
Like this last year, there was numerous days you went out that you didn't see anything.
Didn't see anything.
But then there was other days you'd see 2 or 3 or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
and I hunt on ground that pretty much all of my spots around here, I'm the only one that hunts on it. So
there's not any pressure.
Yeah. It's just the luck of the draw.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's like for you, Steve. Your deer last year, that was the first one you saw, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was of the day. It came in after 2 does passed my stepdad stands about 100 yards north of me, and the does took a different path. But that buck walked east of me, and that's when I was able to take the shot. But, I mean, there had been countless 7-8 years I'd gone out and not got anything, while other people did get something or nobody got anything, you know, and I just enjoyed my time being able to get outside and being outdoors, really. I mean, that's kind of my biggest thing for the outdoors, fishing or hunting, is just being able to be outside and enjoy, you know, the disconnect from everything.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's attached to our phones, and I mean, we're all guilty of it. But that's and even when we're in the stand, sometimes I catch myself. I'm on killing time through Facebook or whatever else. But it's awesome to get out there and just have all the fresh air. And some days it's miserable because it's 10 degrees out and windy. But other days, like in the early season, when it's 40 degrees when you get out there, and by the time you get down, it's 50, 55, and it's nice and warm, and birds are chirping, squirrels are going, which I hate squirrels, but you get to enjoy the entire outdoors, and that's really what it's about. So that's the big I think that's a big thing for people, that they feel like they have to, that they're doing something wrong if they're not seeing stuff. I'm not, don't get me wrong, there are some instances where maybe you're setting up in not the ideal spot, or maybe you are not paying attention to the wind and it swirls around on you and stuff happens, but majority of the time it's just nice to get out there and enjoy the outdoors.
Just be outside and be in nature.
Yeah. So, which that moves us on to the size of deer. There's a huge debate out there where it's the does with fawns and size of deer are our next 2 real topics on this, and I feel like they kind of tie together, because there's a lot of people that say they won't take does with fawns. They won't take them unless they don't have spots, or it gives them a better chance if you let them pass, all those things. And then bucks, same thing. They're like, well, they don't want to take a buck that's only a spike or a fork or whatever. They don't want to take it. Various levels of hunters, I feel like there's a definite line somewhere along the way that you start trophy hunting more than you are just hunting for meat in the sport.
Yeah.
My first buck I took was an 8-point. He was a 1.5 years old, 8-point, beautiful rack, super small, like 50 inches maybe. He just had stickers everywhere. And then my latest buck that I took, it was 117-inch buck. So it's all about what you want to do. I don't think that there shouldn't be deer shaming. There shouldn't be people out there saying, hey, you shouldn't let them grow or whatever. If that's what you're doing, that's fine. But I can't remember if it was you or if it was Steve, but there was one of you guys were telling me about a guy who they went out their very first hunt and they killed a 130-inch deer. But then from there on out, that's all they wanted to kill was a 130-inch deer. And it's like, man, like that's that's not reality.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people that hunt that don't ever kill a 130-inch deer versus let alone your first time. Cat's trying to walk on the computer.
Cats, barn cats.
But I don't know which one of you guys that was, but it's
No, I don't think that was me.
it could have been somebody else. Could have been somebody else I was talking about, but or talking with on it. But
Yeah.
I know your deer, your first deer probably wasn't a
Little deer.
Yeah.
Little 6-point. But here's the thing. I'm happy to kill whatever most of the time. But, I mean, most of the time I'm one of those guys that will pass up deer if it's not something I want to shoot. It's like I'm not going to shame someone else for.
Right.
I'm super excited for people who kill anything, you know.
Right.
As long as they're having a good time and it gets them outdoors and gets them into the sport, that's what I care about more. And it's like too many people worry about what other people are doing. And it's like just go out and
enjoy the time.
enjoy your time and have fun.
The way I hunt's going to be different than the way you hunt. The way you hunt's going to be the different way than Steve hunts. And there's nothing wrong with it. Again, like I said back before, there's no right way of doing this. There are, now when it comes to going to the other topic of does and fawns, again, if it depends on your level or experience, but I feel like does with fawns, if they don't have spots.
Yeah, I agree.
If
they don't have spots, they're, in my opinion, they're going to be old enough to fend for themselves.
Well, and there was one, I can't remember the exact dates on it, but there was one article I read that was it's like 3 months. It's like 100 days.
Yeah,
it's like 100 days after they're born, they've found that they can pretty much do everything on their own. They're not learning as much from their mother, but they can survive on their own. They know where to eat, they know where to go, and like with my doe that I shot last year, she had a big fawn with her. But 10 minutes after I shot that doe, that fawn linked up with another doe and another fawn, and I've got pictures of both of them still linked up together. So they'll find a way. You're not going to hurt the herd if you kill a doe that's got a fawn. Now that obviously with the spots is a little bit different. I know that kids make mistakes, and there's sometimes if a kid gets out there, a young adult that's out there the first time, that they may not see it or whatever. But then again, at the end of the day,
if you're a meat hunter, though,
it doesn't matter. It's the best meat.
That's the best meat that you're gonna have. So,
and it shouldn't matter to me what you harvest. If you harvest something that's a small buck or a small doe or a big doe or a 160-inch buck, it matters nothing to me besides the fact that you were successful. You put the time in, you put the effort in, you did everything right. It's just the size of the deer was different than somebody else's. Yeah.
Speaking of that,
I'm eating peppered and garlic baby buck right now. I think what I shot was a great size.
Exactly. It all fits in the freezer the same. Yeah. I mean, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
An evolution of your hunting. Maybe you start off shooting anything you see, and then throughout your hunting career, you want to wait for the bigger one, you know?
Yeah. Well, right. And during the go ahead.
Just speaking of that, just a couple years ago, I took my little cousin hunting, and she had been a couple times with her dad, but never had killed anything. And the first deer we saw was a yearling from that year. And she asked if I was going to shoot it, and I said, yeah, I'm going to shoot it. Yeah. Just because you're here, and I mean, that's just part of the experience. And I mean, I could have threw that deer over my shoulder and walked out with it, but we went through the whole thing of, sitting there and gutting her, and then we both dragged her out of the woods. And
teaching experience. It's a learning curve.
Yeah. She's super pumped about it and has never forgotten that since.
Right.
So.
Well, that's like with my biggest buck, thankfully, I just was stupid lucky. I was with my son that year, 2 years ago, and was able to harvest the 117-inch buck that I got. But it wouldn't have mattered if it was that 117-inch deer or if it was a spike or whatever. I would have shot anything that day because it was the first time he's ever been out with me. I wanted to show him what it was like, and he absolutely loved it. He would have loved it no matter what it was. Like you said, it didn't matter the size of it. So, biggest thing out there is everybody needs to do what they need to do for them, and to make sure that if that's what they want, if that's what they want to fill their freezer with, then it's nobody else's business. So
I'm
gonna wrangle these cats around here.
Yeah. Thanks, Lisa.
Lisa gave him these cats.
Are all three of them still going?
Well, I only see two, so I don't know what happened to the third one.
We'll get to that off camera.
You having stir fried tonight?
Yeah.
We had Chinese last day at work. But
Moving on.
Again, don't let things discourage you from getting out there and hunting. A lot of this, I know a lot of people that we're probably talking to right now are already hunters that are out there doing this on a daily basis. But like Steve said, with a seasoned hunter, I'm not a seasoned hunter by any means, but as you get into the more years of hunting now, I've been hunting for this will be my 10th or 11th season, and I've been fortunate enough that I've killed and harvested 6-7 deer. So I'm not experienced. I'm not super experienced. My uncle, he's got more wall hangers than deer that I've gotten killed. So I'm not super experienced with it. I've had good experiences the last few years. I've been very fortunate back to one of the other podcasts that we had about land permission. I used to hunt just public land, and now that I've been able to get more permission land to hunt, my success rate has been higher. So it's just all about that too. But the longer I've been doing this, the more apt I'm going to be to take a little bit bigger of a buck or a little bit bigger of a doe. But then again, at the end of the season, when it comes down to the end of the season, if you've got 2 weeks left of the season and a little spike buck or a fork buck walks through and you've got no meat in the freezer,
yeah,
I'm going to stick them.
Yeah.
So there's no questions about it.
Yeah.
And that's where it boils down to with a lot of people too. Like Steve, I know you only had how many days were you able to hunt this year?
1.
I started off 3, but it turned out I only needed day 1 gun season.
Right.
Or the second day of gun season, my first day being able to go out.
So really, so somebody like you who's only able to get out a handful of days throughout the entire season, it doesn't matter for you what walks in front of you. You're going to take it because you want meat for the freezer. You want to be able to have venison. So that also plays into it too. Like your first day out, if you've only got 3 days, your first day out is like one of your last days to hunt almost. So it's might as well, whatever walks in front of you, if you want to be successful, you take whatever walks in front of you. So
especially if only being able to hunt gun this year because I haven't got into archery. So
right. So, but one of the this is going to be kind of a shorter podcast today because we spent out probably 20 minutes walking around outside.
Yeah.
Aaron's got a beautiful property. It's awesome. Steve, you ever been out here?
No, I haven't.
You
Look forward to it this weekend.
Yeah, you need to. It's going to be great. But one of the other problems that I've had, we've all make mistakes. We all make mistakes in the woods. My uncle's been hunting for 35, 40 years, and he makes a mistake or two every year. He's made more mistakes earlier in his career time hunting than he has now, but as we all do, we all learn from it, and that's the biggest thing to learn from it. But one of my mistakes that I wanted to talk about is that, like I said, I've not killed a whole lot of deer. I've killed a few, but learning how to properly track, that was one of my biggest things that hurt me early on in my, I guess, career hunting, if you will, was the very first or the second deer that I ever shot. I tracked too soon. I tried to track too soon. I was hunting public ground. I was right on the edge of the forbidden ground, if you will. I was hunting Camp Atterbury. I was hunting an area that butted up to a firing range that had no access points. You could walk into it, but it was an impact zone. It's got signs everywhere saying "Stay out, impact zone." Trespassers will be prosecuted, so on and so forth. So that was part of my mistake for hunting that area, but that area was a ton of deer back there.
Yeah.
So being new at hunting, that was going to be one of my first places to go when I found it, just because I had a potential of high success rate back there. And I ended up arrowing a doe, and she was, probably 15 yards away when I shot her, and she took like a bat out of hell, and she came from the north, and so I figured if she came from the north, that she'd probably try to turn around and come back that same way, after I shot. Well, when I shot her, head to the ground, ran straight south as fast as she possibly could. And I kind of panicked a little bit, and I got down maybe 10 minutes into the waiting period, started tracking, ended up bumping her, and ended up never finding her because she ran into the impact zone. Called DNR. They're like, yeah, no, the Army owns that, military owns that. They're not going to let anybody back there, no matter what it's for, so on and so forth. So I still did my part in trying to find it. It just played out to where I couldn't, and that actually happened again this year with the Fort Bend hunt.
Yeah.
I put the video up, and I'm not ashamed of that. It's mistakes that have happened. Everybody that hunts long enough is going to make the mistake, or they're going to have a bad shot and they're not going to be able to find it. Or like in my case, this year I had a doe, or a buck actually. It was a small buck. Atterbury or Fort Bend, they don't care about the size. It's just a reduction hunt. They want you to take anything that walks in front of you. And I ended up was getting down out of my stand, had my stand on my back, my backpack on, everything. Was getting ready to walk out, and a buck walked in, and he came within. He was 20 yards away, and I let the arrow fly. And on that video, I even asked everybody if they could hear what happened. And I let the arrow fly, and literally right before impact, it hit a limb and kicked it to the right. And when it kicked to the right, it hit partial liver, I'm assuming partial liver, but mainly all gut. And so I did my best to back out quietly. I had to go pick the kids up from school, so I was going to let them stay for a little bit. And the Fort Bend hunt's only a 2-day hunt. And so they need you to check the deer in by like 5 o'clock or whatever it was. So I came back. I was kind of forced to have to track a little earlier than what I would have liked to. I would have liked to have let them sit the next day, but if you arrow a deer, they want you to try to get it that day. So I went out and tried to track it, had my 2 boys with me. Long story short, ended up, again, we tracked too soon, kind of had to, but we bumped it and went deep into a neighboring property that we tried for 2 days to get a hold of the property owner. Couldn't get a hold of him, couldn't get permission to go on the property, and that was pretty much it. So I don't know if you've ever...
Yeah, so I was pretty fortunate when I first started hunting. If me or my stepdad ever killed anything, he was always patient enough. We would always walk back to the truck and, like get a bite to eat or take all of our stuff off so we could go track and not sweat and, all that. So we always had plenty of time for the deer to expire. And so I always tried to remember that, but trying to think, it's probably been 6 or 7 years ago now. I killed a little buck down the road and didn't wait. I thought it was a good shot, and that's why this is a deer that made me change to from mechanical broadheads to fixed.
Okay.
So shot him. He goes taking off through a field and into some thick brush where I can't see, and I knew that it was a pretty good shot. So I get down and I start tracking, and there's just little drops of blood here and there. So it was a pretty short walk back to the truck, and drop all my stuff off, then go back, start tracking the deer, and I jump him 2 times, and he gets into the river, and then I see him get out on the other side. So I left, went back the next day, and got permission to walk on the other side of the river. Someone else had owned it, and so I was walking down through there. Didn't find any blood, didn't find him. And so I get down in the river, and I'm walking on these little islands here and there. They're grown up and brush and whatnot, and literally step on his hindquarter, and he's laying there dead in the river.
Oh, man.
And so when I find him, he had broke off the end of the arrow where the broadhead was, and it looked like a field point and went in, and the broadhead didn't expand like it should have. It just stayed. Yeah. So I barely had an entry hole, and I turned him over, and it had just exited just the tip of it, so it blocked the other side. So that's why I switched to fixed broadheads instead of mechanical, but
Well, that's the thing is it learning curve, and that's and I've had great success with mechanical.
Yeah,
I've had earlier in my time hunting, I used and like with that doe, I used a fixed head.
Yeah,
but I didn't.
Yeah,
my shot probably wasn't as good then as it is now.
Yeah.
So
going back to the tracking part, though, now I always try to make myself wait, even though I'm pretty impatient about it. I want to go and get it as quick as I can, just because I'm excited, and But the only way I'll get right down out of the stand is if I see it drop within eyesight. So.
Well, even then, sometimes I've like the doe that I shot, my second doe this year. She went 40 yards maybe, and I saw her not bed, but she went down behind a tree. I could see her legs, but I really couldn't see her anymore. And I saw her go down, but it was one of those things where I was like, you know what? Again, I've been burned by it before, just like you said. Yeah. And I waited 35, 40 minutes before I got down. And actually, the only reason why I got down sooner was because that was when that mink.
Oh, yeah.
There was a mink that had gotten up on my deer and started eating at the entrance wound. And I could see the mink sitting on top of something in that general area, and I got within 10 yards, and the mink was still sitting there trying to gnaw on it. So, so I think we lost Steve. Steve had to go. So, but a lot of people out there, my uncle, again, like I'll go back to him because it all goes to how you learned how to hunt. I'm pretty much self-taught. Long story short, my father passed a long time ago, and he didn't have the ability to teach me what he would have liked to have taught me. So I learned a lot on my own. I learned a lot later in life about how to hunt, and deer hunting especially. So that was before I talked to my uncle about hunting, and he'd help me about stuff. And later on, when I talked to him about that incident that day, he pretty much said too, he was like, you know what? He said, it's a learning curve. You're teaching yourself. You'll learn from your experiences. You'll learn from your mistakes. If you don't, then you're going to repeat the mistake again. So, but he told me, like I said, he's been hunting for 30, 40 years, and he's had the same issue. He almost quit hunting one year because of that. He ended up having, for one reason or another, he had shot a doe and ended up not being able to find it. It happens. But the part that hit him hard is that it happened to him again. I think it was the same time around when the mechanical broadhead started becoming real popular. He started using those, and he ended up not being able to find. Pretty much, it was 2 deer in the same season that he wasn't able to find. Yeah. And he pretty much hung all his stuff up. He was done for the year, and came back the next year and kind of redid some of the things that he did the year before. Went back to the basis of what he had before, and he's been successful ever since. He hasn't had an issue, but a guy that's been as experienced as what he was, it happens. Yeah. You hunt long enough, it's going to happen. You're going to make a mistake.
Especially archery.
100%.
You're going to lose deer. No matter how good of a shot you are, you're eventually going to lose a deer. So
it's just, it's unfortunate that feeling of knowing that you're not going to be able to find it, or when the blood trail ends and you're on hands and knees trying to find every last drop and you still can't find anything, or you can't tell what's blood or what's the red on the leaves from the fall changing colors and everything. It's very demoralizing. But then again, too, for all the hunters out there that are new or getting into it, don't let that deter you from doing it. We've all lost deer. Everybody that's out there has lost a deer at some point in time, or if they haven't, they're going to. Those are the only two ways. You're either going to lose one or you've already lost one. So if you lose one, it's part of the game. Just do your best as long as you've done everything you can to make sure that you've been able to find it or recover it. At the end of the day, that's all you can do. And when you're hunting properties that are within the middle of a bunch of other properties that you don't have permission to be on, if it goes onto that property and you can't find it or you can't access that property, and you've called and you've done all your due diligence to try to get it, at the end of the day, that's all you can do. So something's going to eat it. It's not going to go to waste. You're going to have animals out there that go out there and eat it, and you're going to feed them for the next day or two. But you just need to do your part to make sure that you can put it in your freezer as best as possible. And sometimes it happens, or most times it happens. Sometimes it doesn't. So really, that's
about it.
That's about it for today. Like I said, it's going to be a pretty short and sweet podcast today. We got a little bit of a late start, and Steve's not able to make it, daddy daycare, and doing his parenting, and then I got to go pick up my kids here in a little bit. So we got a lot of big things coming up soon, though. I talked to the gentleman that owns Antler Grow, and I'm going to be traveling down to Kentucky. We haven't set the date yet, but it'll be sometime late May, early June to go do a segment on his product and what he's got. He actually owns a property right next to my brother's property in Kentucky, so I'm going to go down there and talk with him and figure out the product itself, get some insight on how it works and how to use it and all that good stuff on it. And then we also have an interview coming up with a bass fisherman, pro angler, John Sherrill. He's also an IFD fireman, and we're going to be sitting down with him now that the spring's kind of coming in.
Turkey season.
And turkey season. So, which turkey season, I don't know shit about turkey season. I know how to go out there, and I feel like I'm a decent caller. I've seen a lot of turkeys. I've never harvested a turkey. So if we get one this year, if I get one this year, it'll be my first one. And
it'll be on film.
And it'll be on the film. I'll be able to share that with you guys. So I know you've harvested.
I've killed two
turkeys. Indiana just sucks for turkeys. At least
Central
Indiana.
Southern Indiana's good.
Yeah. So, and then there might be a Kentucky turkey hunt too. Still got to work out the details on that. But my brother's property down there, he's got a pretty healthy turkey population. So if I can talk to the boss into hanging out with the kids for a couple of days, so I can get away and go down there, that'd be awesome. But we'll see on that. So we got that coming up. Turkey season's coming up right around the corner.
Fishing.
4. When's turkey? 4 weeks?
Yeah.
4 weeks. 5 weeks.
A little over 5 weeks.
Fishing season's coming up. Like I said, we're going to be talking with John Sherrill, getting some kind of spring tips and kind of his ideas and ways of how he does things. He's pretty good. He's got sponsors and all that stuff. So he's placed pretty highly in some tournaments that he's been in, and he's really good at fishing. So we're going to be talking with him, picking his brain, and then we got another buddy of ours who's a great fisherman as well, but he fishes for catfish. You see me, I wear his shirt all the time. It was Indiana River Cats. They've got a whole league where they go around the state and down on Ohio River and so on and so forth and do some catfishing. So these guys pull out 30, 40 pounders like it's nothing. So we're going to do a segment with him too to try to better our knowledge and maybe give some pointers out there to you guys of what to do, and hopefully we'll be able to go out and do some filming with them and bring you guys some good footage of all that. So
make sure you go over to Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, follow, like, subscribe,
share, hit that share button.
Yeah, hit the share button.
It helps us out a lot. So the more we get into this, the bigger we get, we're able to do a little bit more with everything. So we want to be able to reach as many people as possible to try to get more people out there. The 100 numbers on a decline, we talk about it all the time. Everybody that is in this game knows about it. So if you don't know about it, get out there and read into it. We need as many people to start doing this as much as possible because it helps with conservation efforts. It helps with getting the population of animals back to where they used to be at. And it just overall helps. It helps with public land, getting access to public land, which we need in Indiana.
Yeah.
More habitat, better habitat. So hopefully you guys enjoyed it. We enjoy doing it. So even if there's only 10 people watching this, all 10 of you, we appreciate it. So stay tuned for next time.
Yeah.
So
see ya.
have a good one.